You are running an impossible yet achievable race.
And if you get to the end and you finish this race, you will find yourself no longer on earth, but in heaven.
It is by far the most important race that any of us will run. And here's the thing, you cannot do it on your own.
Hey, welcome to the Bible Story Podcast. My name is John, and my tea-drinking friend is...
Braden Pahowich.
Normally you got a coffee.
I know, it's a very cold and wintry day out, so...
It is. We'll show you a picture a little later.
Yeah.
We've got the challenge coming up November 11th to 13th for students in grades 9 to 12.
Yep.
Register at covenantbay.ca.
It is going to be really fun. And we're talking about the challenge in a few different ways. One, we get to do ridiculous challenges. It's snowing outside, so that might come into play. And we're also talking about why it is such a challenge to live for Christ. Specifically, maybe in school or at home or whatever scenario you find it challenging in.
Well, this past week, I had our second small group, which was a lot of fun. And I just think these students are really benefiting now from getting together, encouraging one another in their faith. It's pretty cool. Now, and coming up before this episode is released, but after we record it, kind of like the in-between Twilight Zone.
We're talking to you from the future past?
Correct.
Yes.
You're going to be doing one online.
Yeah, so we're doing one online. It's a virtual small group, very similar to the one John's doing in person, except ours is, well, virtual. Basically, if you're far away or you can't drive or whichever, this group is for you. And we're going to be going over the podcast and just really kind of leaning into that idea of community and small group discussion. So I think we said grades 8 to 12 on that one online. And so feel free to join us Sunday, 7 p.m. All the info, covenantbay.ca.
Awesome. Well, this past few weeks, we've been looking at the book of Philippians, which is a letter from Paul to the Philippian church.
Last week, John, we learned that our identity is given to us by God.
That's right. And today we're going to learn what our role here on this earth is as followers of Christ.
Yeah. And this is something we have kind of alluded to before, but it goes way more in depth. So again, that idea that we're citizens of heaven, which is a theme or phrase that Paul introduced us to earlier in the text.
Yeah. And today, Paul kind of makes this comparison of the Christian journey to a race. Now, I want you guys to think of a team of runners running a mud race.
Ugh. So a mud race is the one with mud. And obstacles and things to get over and things to get under and things to go through. And it is hard.
Really hard.
Yeah.
And you need a team to get it done.
Yes, you need a team. So the Christian journey specifically that Paul is talking about, or the race, is this idea that the Christian walk is from our imperfect selves to our perfect selves in heaven, the eternal self.
Yeah, that's right. And Paul really focuses in on the idea of holiness, or this living a perfect life, a righteous life. And the idea that, we just can't do that on our own, under our own power. Yeah. And so we'll get a little bit more into that.
Yeah, so the idea that this is impossible yet achievable is obviously an oxymoron.
Hey, who are you calling an oxy?
Yeah, what? That's what I was calling you. Just jokes. But it's this idea that it is impossible, and we recognize that when sin was brought into the world, that the relationship between us and God was severed. So it was impossible for us to then inhabit the same space as God and live with him forever. Jesus, our Savior, came to earth and reconnected us.
That's right.
With that kind of grand purpose and the idea that we can eventually reach perfection. We can only do that through Jesus, and we can really only do that with other people. And so that's the achievable side of it.
Cool. Well, I want to say, guys, when we look at what God calls us to, it is daunting.
It is tough.
This is not an easy race.
No. John, so I've heard people ask that before. Kind of speak to that for a second. Like, what if it's just too much or feels like too much? Like, I've been running this race for a while and I'm tired and I'm exhausted. And like, man, I don't see a lot of growth, or I don't see a lot of ground covered.
Well, I just want to say this.
Okay.
If you have shown up to the race today and you're continuing to run this race, I just want to say great job, because like 95% of running a race is just showing up.
Yeah.
Like you can't run a race if you're not there. And so I just want to say you're doing great. You're going to do awesome. Not just simply because you've shown up, but because of who Jesus Christ is.
Yeah. So I really like that. You have to start. You got to to run the race. You got to start moving your legs. And here's the thing that Paul says that's really interesting, and kind of profound. But okay, John, I need you to picture yourself at the start of a race, and your favorite chocolate bar or snack or cheeseburger is at the end of the race. And you're...
I'm going to win this race.
Great. You're against 10 other people who are taller and faster than you.
What?
What's
going... older and slower?
Younger and wiser.
What?
So what's going through your head?
Okay, well, right now, since I've got competitors who are obviously better than me at this, I'm thinking about how I can sabotage them and cheat, possibly, to win.
Yeah. Okay, so cheating is bad.
But it's for a good cause.
I know, for a good cause for you.
Cheeseburger, a chocolate bar, something.
Okay. So good points. So immediately you think like, I'm competing against these people beside me, and I want to take them out at all costs, apparently, for a small chocolate bar.
Yep.
You were competitive. But here's the thing. Paul kind of flips it on its side.
Yeah.
He makes us look at it from a very different perspective and says, we're not called to compete against the people beside us, but we're actually in the race with them as teammates, as people who can help each other out in various situations, and we help them and they help us. So we get to look ahead at the people, it says, or Paul says, and learn and grow from those ahead of us.
Which is why I love the imagery of a mud race, because you're in it together.
There's a team aspect to it.
That's right.
Okay. Sorry.
Yep.
I'm going to interrupt you.
Okay.
I have a hard question for you.
Oh.
Yeah. So what do we do when I think of someone ahead of me in life, I think of someone older.
Okay.
Yes. But
is that me?
Maybe.
Okay.
But when I think of the Christian journey, which Paul is specifically speaking on, he doesn't necessarily say older.
Right.
So how do we know if someone's, quote unquote, ahead of us in that journey?
Okay. So somebody that I've learned from much and maybe is ahead of me in this journey, once told me that you can learn something from anyone. And so they don't have to necessarily be, quote unquote, ahead of you for you to be able to learn and benefit from them. In fact, you can even benefit from somebody who's making really bad choices, and you can be like, I'm going to learn from their pain and not fall into those things.
I like that. That's really good. Okay, so we have kind of fleshed out this imagery of a race, right? Paul's painted this picture quite well.
Yeah.
He does a really good job. And so I think there's like, let's bring it home to some of the, applicable parts of it. What about a race and this idea of running it together is Paul really kind of getting at here?
Well, I think I've got two ideas, and and maybe you've got more to add, but two ideas that really stood out to me is, one, in a race, there's a lot of urgency. And within urgency, what I mean is that you can't stop running a race before you're no longer in the race, right? So you got to keep going. You got to put one foot ahead of the other. And there's a sense of like, we want to get there sooner rather than later.
Yeah, there's like a timer you're trying to... Yeah,
right.
I get it.
Second, there's a sense of like, I want to win, not against you, but I want to win that chocolate bar. I want to get the prize at the end of the race, which for us as followers of Christ is heaven, right? We want to be with Christ because we are citizens of heaven. We want to be with Christ in heaven and enjoy a relationship with him.
Right. And the sense that, like, if you make it there before I do, or go to heaven before I do, it is not, then I don't get to go. So you don't get to win it in
I don't get the prize and you not
Yeah.
get the prize. We get the prize
Anyone who
together,
finishes gets the prize.
which is pretty awesome.
It's great.
Now, did you learn anything?
No, nothing.
Oh.
Just jokes.
All right, we're all done.
Yeah, two points to add to that I think Paul really kind of points out are one, focus. So he talks about focus in two different ways. I think he says focus on the people ahead of you and don't focus on the things that have stumbled you in the past, tripped you up. Don't look back. Any good runner or race taker, that's a term, knows that you got to look forward, right? You can't you can't keep looking back. Otherwise you're not kind of, headed in the right direction. And then the last thing is pace. So I think there's this idea that, in any long distance race, there is times when you're faster or slower. There's miles that are faster or slower. And so, there's hills maybe.
Yeah.
And one person's race is different than another person's race realistically. And so there's times when you might feel like you're growing immensely and quickly and taking in so much. And there's times when it might feel slower and like you're maybe running through water.
Yeah.
All of that just saying it can be hard.
That's a really good point because life is hard. And that's the race. That's the track that we're running is this life journey. Yeah. Okay. So Paul adds a couple of things and I'd like you to maybe build on this a little bit because we haven't emphasized it enough, I don't think. Okay. We are not in this alone. Okay. Okay. So we've got others. Yep. And we also have Christ.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, we've said on this podcast, community, we are made for community. We're made to do this walk, this race, this journey with other people. And that is like the truest fact. We can't do it on our own.
Absolutely.
The other point is Jesus is the one that even made this race possible, right? Sin separated us from God. It created that divide. And Jesus is the person that created that connection. He brought us back together. And without him, without his sacrifice, without him paying the debt for our sins, the race wouldn't even end.
Right. Yeah.
We would never be able to get into heaven because that is where sin is not able to enter.
I love the imagery or the illustration of the mud race. So I'm going to go back to it. Yeah. Okay. So
I think they call it a Tough Mudder. At least that's one of the brands.
Yeah.
Behind
I'm
it.
sure.
It sounds tough.
Yeah. So the idea is some of these obstacles are actually impossible for a single person, one person to do by themselves.
Like I think like a 12-foot wall or something.
Yeah. Like unless you're like some superpowered ninja, like you're not getting over some of these or through some of these obstacles. So they have to complete these together. Yeah. And then the other part of that, what I think is really cool is sometimes there's injuries. And sometimes
I think a lot of the time there's injuries.
And sometimes pretty big injuries. So it's not uncommon to see competitors, teams carrying one of their own across the finish line. Like there'll be times when life gets really hard for me, Braden. Yeah. And we're good friends. We support each other in each other's journey. Mm-hmm. I will need you to carry me in my Christian faith at times. Right. And I know there will be times when you need me to do the same for you. Right. Whether it's simply picking you up or putting your arm around my shoulder or vice versa. Like we need each other to get this race done. It's impossible without each other. Mm-hmm. And then there's this other idea that, like it's achievable, right? Yeah. Yeah. It almost doesn't make a ton of sense. But it's only achievable through God, right? He is the one that makes the impossible possible. And it's only through, the power of Jesus and really the blood and sacrifice of Jesus that we're able to reach the goal, to be citizens of heaven in heaven. Yeah, think of it like that final obstacle, like this big, massive river. Mm-hmm. And like not even your team members can get each other over that river. Right. And Jesus is the one that then bridges that gap. He is the one that connects us. And so without him, it would continue to be impossible. Growth tip time. Growth tip time. All right. So, John, I'm getting ready to run the Christian mud race. It does sound tough. Give me the growth tip. What were you thinking this week that's going to help us? Okay, I think there's some aspects of being intentional growers, people who
Ooh.
are intentionally growing their faith versus like accidentally. It's like sometimes we grow because of some pain in our lives and we don't intentionally experience pain.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, I made a bad decision or somebody else made a bad decision that's impacting all of us. We need to learn from this decision or
Right.
this situation.
I did the wrong thing. I hurt a friend and now I'm going to grow. I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
But I didn't intentionally go into today thinking I was going to learn that lesson.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I think there's some intentional things to do that we can do to help us in our Christian faith. And one of those things is asking really good questions, being a learner, being curious about
I like that.
things. And so ask good questions of other people, ask good questions of yourself, reflect, read scripture, find the answers somewhere to those questions. Okay.
Great.
The second thing that we can do is we can embrace the struggle. Think of those mud races and the obstacles. They are in there on purpose, right?
Right.
To make
nobody signs up saying like this could be really easy.
Right. They sign up because it's hard, which is
Right.
kind of strange, but it's exhilarating at the same time.
Mm.
And so if we embrace these struggles in life as though they are obstacles that we can overcome together as a group with Christ, it's such a different posture and it becomes, I'm not going to say easier, but it becomes better.
Well, it becomes doable.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have hope as well
Yeah.
as a result. And the final thing is you got to practice. You got to put the time in and you got to practice. You can't run a race if you don't start, if you don't put the time in, training, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're going to run this faith journey, practice, do stuff. So intentionally grow through learning, good questions, embrace the struggle, and practice.
Yeah. Well, that's a great growth tip for today that, kind of sums it up. That also sums up our episode.
It is.
So thank you all for listening. Again, we're currently reading through Philippians chapter 3, and we're so grateful to have you guys here journeying with us as part of our team. And it might not be a muddy day, but it certainly is a snowy day.
It is a snowy day. Hey, we love you guys. Be sure to sign up for the event, the challenge, and we would love to have you there. We'll talk to you next week.
Hey, welcome back. John and I are about to get into the questions for the episode, Your Impossible Yet Achievable Race.
Yeah. Paul compared the Christian life to a race, and we thought a mud race specifically was a great illustration. And the final prize is life in heaven with Jesus Christ. Now, we learned that we needed others to finish this race. It's impossible to do it on our own. And other people not only help us grow in this journey and in a relationship with Jesus, but they are also there to bring us hope and support.
Right. Yeah.
We also learned that Jesus Christ himself is that bridge to that final finish line to get to heaven. We can't get there. It's like an impossible river to cross without him. And so Jesus Christ is our only way to one day be in heaven with him.
He is what makes it achievable.
That's right.
All right. Okay, so we're going to jump into the questions here. Question number 1, starting us off, is running a race takes a lot of focus, takes a lot of effort. So what are some of the things in your life, maybe in your social group or, in your schedule that distract you from focusing on what we learned about today, focusing on that idea of running that race well? Hit pause and share.
All right, question number 2. People from time to time can help us grow in our faith and run this race, and sometimes they trip us up. Now, I'd like you to answer this question. Who helps you in this race, and who from time to time trips you up? Hit pause and discuss.
And our third and final question. Paul reminded us that this world is not our home,
We are citizens of heaven.
Citizens of heaven, therefore heaven is our home, and we belong to Christ. And so take some time to dream about what heaven for you might be like, what Jesus is preparing for you there. Allow yourself to dream and just enjoy that picture together. Share that with one another and discuss that.
Hey guys, thank you for being with us here this afternoon or this morning, whatever time of day it might be for you. Just a reminder, if you haven't registered for the challenge and you are in grades 9 through 12, please do that because we would love to hang out with you during that retreat.
Or if you're maybe further away and want to join us online virtually for some of the small group chats, then please also do that or do both.
That's right. Pray with each other, encourage each other throughout this week. Remember this, there's nothing more important than a growing relationship with Jesus Christ.
You guys are the best. Take care. We love you.